and we're here again for more on advancing the cause. Well, I don't know if it's desperation, perspiration, respiration. I don't know what it is, but some kind of ration happening with the PPP, and I'm sure you know that. But before we go into our little discussion for tonight, let me say to you, happy birthday to all those who would have celebrated birthdays, man. Look, we got some people who celebrated 50th, 48th, 25th, 15, 16, all kinds of numbers. We're just happy for you. And we want to say happy birthday to you. And we trust that this birthday will bring you lots and lots of success for this entire year. And then outside of that, we've got some persons who would have celebrated wedding anniversaries, 48th wedding anniversary, 38th wedding anniversary, 15th wedding anniversary. I just can't call the names because I'm going to get myself into problems. So happy anniversary to all of you. And I trust that the fire that you've kept burning, or the touch that you added to that fire to keep the flame glowing, that you'll continue to add that touch, and lots of love will continue to flow in and around you and around your family. Tonight, we are going to have our discussion with Dr. Mark Devonish, who's always here with us. You know, if I can talk about one Guyanese who's living overseas and he's always into everything that is happening, he's always part and parcel of everything. He wants to see things happen right in this country, is Dr. Mark Devonish. I know there is going to come one day, it may be just after September 2nd, 2025, that we're going to have Dr. Devonish returning to Guyana to give of his service. Dr. Devonish, welcome to Advancing, because again, I'm not sure why I'm telling you welcome, because you're always here with me. And we're going to talk quite a lot tonight. So viewers, sit back, relax, put on your seatbelts, because we're in for a wonderful ride tonight. Dr. Devonish, yes, we need Dr. Devonish on. I'm not seeing, yes. Hi, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm quite well. I'm perfectly well. Feeling absolutely splendid.
Good. Well, you noticed tonight I wanted to somewhat compliment you. So I
Mm,
decided I'm going to wear my green and my white
mm.
with some streaks of black, so that I can add some more flair to your colors today. Because I kind of peep your wardrobe, and I knew what you were.
Mm.
So what's been happening with you over the last couple of days, Mark?
Well, not really a great deal, to be honest. The birdie angel, or the birdie fairy, has been around by me recently and has
Mhm.
informed me that Sherry Duncan has celebrated his birthday a few days ago. I am not too sure how old he is, but if I'm to make a guess based on his facial expressions, I would say he's probably about 60, 65. So to Sherry Duncan, a happy birthday to you. We are so happy that you are part of the team. You are part of APNU. And I sincerely hope that you continue to be a part of APNU and continue to contribute positively, being a part of APNU. So all in all, I'm well in myself. I just have a story to share with you, Coretta, and the viewers also. My wife this weekend asked me to vacuum the house. So I vacuumed the house. I went to all the cracks, all the crevices, and I did absolutely everything I thought was perfect. And then she subsequently came after I would have spent 2 hours vacuuming the house and identified paper here and paper there, dust here and dust there. And her comment to me is that only a woman can do things properly. And having reflected on it, I think she's absolutely right. Because over the years, the president of the GTU has always been a male over the years. We had most recently
Oh,
Dr.
yes.
Mark Light has been around very recently. And we know that he has screwed up things. The teachers were demanding 9.5%, and he gave them 10%. He promised them that they'll get scholarships, they'll get housing. He really messed them up. And as a result, GTU has been in complete chaos. But just like how I've gained my experience, my understanding that only a woman can do things right, it is so good that the teachers also realize that only a woman can actually do things right. And as a result, they
Oh,
elected a woman as the president. So tonight, I'm just going to say congrats.
to that woman. I, I'm not sure what is happening there with Dr. Devonish. Something is happening there. But he was just expressing how he feels about women doing things and getting it right. I think he's going to be on a little while from now. He's going to be on. But before we get into that part of it, we know that we would have celebrated some additional birthdays. Not that these are extra special birthdays and they're not as good as your birthdays, but we had today, and I'm sure the operator is going to show us some pictures of them. We've got Sherrod Duncan celebrating his birthday. We have Ricky celebrating his birthday. And we also have who else but our prime ministerial candidate, Madam Coretta Fernand, celebrating her birthday too, all in that streak of a week. And so I want to send out birthday wishes and birthday greetings to them as well. We have Dr. Mark Devonish on again. So yes. So, Mark, we were before we go on to that aspect of the GTU, I was just saying that we had to Ricky Ramsroop and Coretta Finance celebrating their birthdays as well in this very span. So, kudos to them and happy birthday. Well, not kudos, happy birthday to them. And they're not 60. Yeah, Coretta is not 60 and Ricky's not 60. I'm not going to speak for Sharon. But like you were saying, your wife was telling you, and I was thinking, why is she saying that to you? I mean, you work very hard. Why is she saying that to you? But then I got it. I got it after. Well, Mark, tonight we're going to talk about, I was saying earlier that it seems as though desperation, frustration, irritation, irrigation, respiration, all kind of shun stepping in right now with the PPP, and they're not finding gears. And so tonight our caption is the gears are not moving fast enough for the PPP, because if the gears were moving fast and they were moving correctly, then we wouldn't have all the up and down and the scatteration so and all over the place. If you've been checking what has been happening recently, your fancy girl Priya, she has been up, down, and all around. I noticed in flooded waters, in crossing a creek, when one would have known that during a particular period you have heavy rainfall, and so the roadways would be flooded. But even in that, I see my girl walking through a whole lot of water to go and commission a school. I tell you what. But we were talking about the GTU because I noticed my friend Tommy Gibbs is here. And Tommy, it's good to have you here. Desiree Chapman, Mike, Trevor, Miss Floborn, John, everybody, it's good to have you here. And we're going to talk about the gears are not moving fast enough for the PPP. And so we were talking about the GTU. I think we need to complete that because I noticed some folks are, So we're going to talk about the GTU. Mark, you were starting to talk about this. And this is not, mind you, viewers, this is not Mark Light. This is Dr. Mark Devonish. Yes, Barbados in the house. So, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, as I was saying, after my wife brought it to my attention, I wasn't aware of it, that only a woman can do things properly. I reflected on it and I questioned myself, and I reflected very, very deeply, and I came to the understanding that she's right. And I came to the understanding also that the teachers were right in electing a woman as the president of GTU, because only a woman can do things properly. Because the fact remaining, and the fact undisputed, is that the GTU is in complete chaos. The teachers asked for 39%. Dr. Mark Light stabbed them in their backs and gave them 10%. He promised them scholarships. He promised them lands. He promised them duty-free concession. But these are all promises from PPP, so as to get the nurses off the roads from protesting, because they were protesting for over 70 days on the road. And Mark Light, I don't know exactly what actually went into his head, but to actually agree with what PPP was actually offered. But he unilaterally took the stand, despite the fact that to make such a decision, it is important that you get the votes of the teachers to make sure that they are in agreement with what is being put forward. But he didn't actually do that. He actually took it unilaterally and decided that 10% is enough. So the teachers felt very, very despondent, very, very depressed, very frustrated, and very angry. And Mark has left a complete mess. And as a result, I strongly believe that only a woman can actually clean this up. And I strongly believe that a woman of your character, woman of your integrity, can actually clean up GTU and take GTU forward. Take GTU forward as an organization that not only represents teachers, not only act in the best interest of our teachers, but also act in the best interest of our students. And I should also emphasize the point that we can say with much confidence the voting that took place by the GTU wasn't manipulated, as you see in the NGSA results recently. These were genuine voters, and I'm quite sure the GTU is open for a forensic audit to be done to establish the integrity of the voting process.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for your words of congratulations. And indeed, we've got to, there's so much that we have to do with regards to uh, building and bridging the gap and restoring the confidence in our teachers, because our teachers' morale, it dropped to a very low, um, simply because there were some persons there who were only interested in self. If you were interested in the people who would have elected you to lead them, then you ought to consult with them and not to make decisions on your own. But look, I don't want I don't want us to revisit that, because every time I have to go there, I get very, very angry, because we were there on that morning and we had no idea that Mark Light was going to say to us at that meeting, I will be signing this document today as the leader of the team. I will sign the document. Regardless of what you say, I will sign the document. I don't want to revisit that. But the teachers have spoken during the nominations period. The teachers would have spoken. And so Mark Light is out as we speak. And a few others are completely out. So we've got to move towards rebuilding the GTU and ensuring that the GTU get to the level that it was once at. I had to say to a few of our teachers, look, the GTU is 144 years old now. And if the GTU could have withstood all the challenges from then to 144 years, we can withstand any other challenge. And so we're going to be moving places. As we run this, let me say to our viewers, and somebody tag Anil, somebody tag Priya Manik Chand, somebody tag the Prime Minister, somebody tag Irfan, somebody tag Jagdio and Joseph Hamilton, and let them know that the courts would have made a declaration. The judge presided over that matter. As a matter of fact, from the judge from the High Court, this matter was appealed by this wicked government, the PPP. And the appeals court, upheld the decision that was made in the High Court, where they said that the GTU's dues must be reinstated, the deduction of the dues must be reinstated. And that was since last year, April. 1 year and months have passed. And this government, who always talk about because we care and we love people and there are families, they have not yet reinstated the deduction of the dues for the GTU. And so it is clear to us that the PPP, they want to, one, destabilize and kill the GTU. Two, they want to have our teachers standing there like slaves, running behind them and always bowing to them. Because if there is no union, then you can do whatever you want to do to the teachers and they'll have no organization, nobody to represent them. So y'all, please tell those people to reinstate the GTU's dues. It is disgusting that an agreement was signed, that the judge made an order. That is not being the PPP's government, the installed government, they have decided to turn a blind eye to that. And then these people got the audacity to talk about who's honest, who is not this, who is not that, who could run a country, who can't run a country, when they're the most corrupt set of people that we've ever had in this country. Y'all tell them, find the way, just make the call, the same call you made when we indicated to them then that we are going to embark on industrial action. The same call you made to stop the deductions, please make that same call to have the deductions being reinstated. I mean, this is more than wickedness. Mark, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, and then we'll move off.
I mean, PPP always speak of democracy, always speak of PNC not be in adherence with democratic principle. Always argue and always try to make the point that democracy was restored in 1992. Before 1992, we didn't know anything about democracy. And they further argue that in 2020, democracy was actually restored when PP were actually installed. But what they fail to understand that democracy is not only about elections. Democracy is much more complex than that. The government as a whole is divided into the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive. And it's very important in any democracy for the executive, even though they're installed, to obey the orders of the judiciary. And by not obeying the orders of the judiciary, it's a most undemocratic act. So even as they boast, even as they have the braggart, and even as they go along, speaking to everyone on megaphones, trying to give the impression that we have democracy in Ghana, what we do have is not democracy, it's dictatorship. And it's evidence in the fact that the PPP refused to comply with the order of Justice Kissoon in ensuring that that the union fees are being transferred to the bank accounts of the union. And it's quite obvious, as you said, Coretta, what they want to do. They want to destabilize the union. They want to break the backs of the union because they know without a union, you are powerless. Without a union to actually represent you, you are unrepresented and you are vulnerable. And that's what people actually wants. They want the teachers to be vulnerable so that the teachers are answerable to their beck and call. So the point I'm trying to make here, and to summarize the point, is that we do not have democracy. And it's evidence in the fact that people refuse to go ahead, follow the orders of a sitting judge, which is very, very distressing and very, very concerning.
Yes, and they have no if and buts about. They have no shame. Let me say that. And I have a colleague who would say, "Hey, stop talking about shame. They shame out all the shame, so they ain't got no more shame." And of course, Dr. Robin Ford, thanks for being here. That is contempt of court, and we are going to be moving in that direction. Anil likes to come out there and talk about contemptuous and this and that and all kinds of things, but to uphold the decision of the court, he doesn't see that as being important. And so we're going to take that to the next level. And that is, we're saying this so that we want our viewers here to understand that when we speak, we don't come here with Nancy stories. We tell you what is factual when we come on this program. And that is a fact that they can't dispute. But again, our teachers will rally around a party that has their interest at heart. They, under the coalition during the 2015-2020 period, that was when teachers got the highest salary increases coming out of the negotiations. Not the 10% that they threw at you and then 8%. I mean, I don't understand how people could be going into a negotiations and you negotiate for a high figure and then you come low when you're supposed to start with a high figure and then you go higher. But that's another part. That's another part of this story. And Mark Light was responsible for that. Y'all know, I don't know. Y'all don't ask me whether he collected a black plastic bag or a grape. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the selling out. So y'all don't get me involved in that. Don't get me involved in that. But I want to say to you that our teachers will continue to hold together because they understand the importance of a union. And I want to say to all of you here, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your message of congratulations and all the sentiments you've shared. And of course, the help that you have decided to offer in terms of making the union what it is. But let's get right into the program. The PPP. The gear is not moving fast enough. Our operator will show us we're going to put some clips out there. So you'll see what we're talking about. You'll see some of the conditions of the sports facilities all across this country. None incomplete yet. You'll see those. Yeah, so the operator is going to show us some of those. And so this is Charles Ramson right here. This is Charles Ramson. Nothing, 5 years with all the oil money that you have. Operator, you can just slide them through. All the oil money that they have had at their disposal. And this is what we are seeing after 5 years. Not completed, nowhere near completion. Look, this is another one. I think this one is in New Amsterdam. The one you saw before, I think it was Linden. This one is New Amsterdam, or maybe somewhere on the East Coast. Oh, this one here is region 2. I'm being advised this one is region 2. So you notice what is happening. This one here is region 5. Nothing really happening. This is region 6. And you're seeing what is happening. Charles Ramson down the line. And so I'm hearing that the teachers for that primary school down the river from Charity had to be begging the business community for donations to fund on Monday their graduation. Wow. Mark, you're hearing this? The
Yes.
teachers at Martindale, I think it's Martindale Primary, down the river there, the Pomeroon River. Martindale Primary, the teachers had to be seeking out and begging, as the viewer said, begging business persons for donations to fund their graduation on Monday. And we have, Mark, you remember how much was budgeted for education?
I think about 75 billion, if I remember correct. I can't remember straight off the bat, but I know it was a significant amount compared to what was budgeted in the previous years.
According to Paul, Court is
I mean, it's just completely surprising and shocking. After a budget of 143 trillion, that teachers have to go on the streets with bowl in their hands, with buckets in their hands, with their hands up, begging for donations to have their graduation. Even as Priya Manichan, the great incompetent Priya Manichan, would argue that education is being promoted and education is being developed under this PPP. Yet our teachers have to go there, literally begging on their knees for donations for graduations. And that brings into question where all this money that was budgeted for education, where has it gone to? Who has taken up it? We know clearly who has taken it up. It has been taken up by those who are in power, being distributed it to the friends, families, and favorites. And it is absolutely unbecoming. It's absolutely unforgivable for an installed government to be acting this way, to be treating our teachers with such contempt. They've given them a 10% when they actually taught a 9.5%, but to be treating them with such contempt as to having them go on the streets with bowls in their hands, with buckets in their hands, with their hands outstretched on their knees, begging for donations for their graduation, when the education ministry has been allocated hundreds of billions. Where is that money going to? Where is it going to? We all know where it is going to the friends, the families, and the favorites. And the teachers. The money is not being filtered down to the teachers. The monies are not being filtered down to your children. The monies are not being filtered down to your students. Simply because people don't care, even as they may argue because we care.
They just don't care, and we know that. Because I can tell you what, if you look at what's happening with our schools, I know the operator will show us what's happening with our schools. We had several schools within that 5-year span, 7 schools that were burnt. You hear them say arson, you hear they say this, but they know exactly how those schools were burnt, and all of them. Because if you check, every time there's a fire, you see 2 persons there, first and foremost, 2 of them. And the viewers would know, Priya Manik Chand and Robeson Ben, the 2 of them, always on the fire scene. As soon as there's a fire, the 2 of them you have there. And so they're running helter-skelter now, rebuilding those schools. And they're hurrying to do it, but not doing them properly. And while they're hurrying to do them, they're trying to state the fact that under Irfan Ali, for his first term, they have built so many schools. So many schools have been constructed under Irfan's first term. So many schools. But in fact, we ain't talking about schools. If you're talking about schools, you must have a recreational center. You must have a music center. If you go to some of our schools, all you have in some of those schools, especially those that have been rebuilt, that they call quote unquote a modern schools, state of the art schools, what we find, you find a sick bay, you have a computer lab, you have a science lab, half science lab, you have there, you may have a home economics department, and then you have classrooms. You don't have AC units in those classrooms. So when you talk about state of the art schools, we're looking for schools where the children are comfortable. You go to visit some of those state of the art schools and you want to know what is happening there. But of course, it's plenty, 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 enough money. They're contracting, or contracts are awarded for some of those schools. Operator, would you show us some pictures of some of the schools that we've looked at? We just saw Christchurch and St. George's Secondary School, School of the Sciences. Those two schools have been commissioned this week. Over the weekend, we had nursery schools being commissioned in Region 9. But I am waiting for the commissioning of North Rumvelt Secondary School, because that has been there for a long, long time. Of course, it was 566 point something million dollars that were allotted for that school. Contractor gone with his money, and the school is yet to be completed. So additional monies now have to be spent to ensure that that school is where we want that school to be. Operator, you have those pictures? I don't know if the operator has those pictures, but Mark, this is what is happening here. Maybe you can share with us, Mark, what happens in your neck of the woods when we talk about building schools and talking about state-of-the-art schools.
I mean, education is not just about the academics. Education ought to be holistic. I want to say education is holistic. We must not only expose our children to the classroom, where they're being taught the alphabet, where they're being taught their timetables, where they're being taught science, social studies, where they're being taught maths and English. All those things are absolutely important and should not be underestimated. But education must go beyond that. Education must go to the extracurricular. As a result, it is imperative that any school of sort, any school that is being described as modern, has a sports field, that these children can be engaged in sports and activities. If they want to play hockey, if they want to play football, if they want to play cricket, they must have those facilities where they can actually be engaged in sports, where they can actually be engaged in physical education. And even in indoor school, even in the indoors, they could have squash, they could have badminton. So the point is, describing a school as modern, when the school basically has a wooden structure for the children to sit and a blackboard where they're using chalk, is an insult to what a modern school is supposed to represent. A modern school is supposed to be providing holistic education. A modern school is supposed to have first class science labs. Modern school supposed to have smart blackboards where teachers can utilize those smart blackboards to transfer knowledge to the children. A modern school is supposed to have opportunities where children can actually go on different expeditions, can actually go on different tours, educational tours. So what people is actually focusing on is they're focusing a lot on the academics, but they're not focusing on other things that will actually give the kids a holistic education. So looking at the image directly in front of me, the first thought that comes to my mind is not a school. That looks like a prison. That looks like a prison where you incarcerate prisoners. That's not really a school. And even if you look at the number of windows, what kind of ventilation can those kids have? We know Maslow hierarchy of needs. The first rung speaks of comfort. How can you be comfortable in a classroom that has no minimal amount of windows, has no AC, you're hot as hell, and you're congested? It's absolutely shocking. And it's an absolute insult to people to be describing these infrastructure worksheets, these horrible infrastructure works which they describe as schools. Is absolute insult for them to be describing them as modern schools, because they're very, very far from modern.
Operator, could you flash the other schools? Because we're just at this one building. We'd want to see the other buildings if you have them there. Just run them across the screen while we are going to be talking. So we have this is one school in the hinterland that they're putting down there, and like you rightfully said, Mark, this is a prison. This is another school that is being constructed, and all of these things happening this year. All of these things happening this year. And you know what is the next problem that we're going to have? Flooding. When it rains heavily, we're going to have flooding. And so when it floods now, you have to pay another contractor to come to raise the floor. And I mean, I don't know what is going through some person's head. I don't know what, but these are the kinds of designs that we're talking about modern state of the art schools. I don't know what is going through their heads. We can go on with the photographs, because we want to talk about North Rumville Secondary School and what is happening with that school. I remember, and Mark, you would remember, when Burnham had a design created for these multilateral schools, we had everything there. You had a facility for the gym where the students can go there. You had the parts for the art, the section for the department for the art. You had home ec, you had technical drawing, you had woodworks department, everything you had there. The PPP came and they just washed everything out, because of course they don't want to be reminded of Burnham. So they've washed everything out. Now, in this modern era, when we're talking about all the monies that we are having, we're supposed to start talking about having backup generators at our schools. If there is a power outage, then the entire building is dark. You know, nothing else could work because we don't have any other facility to give us any power. So everything else is on standstill. And then the children they got a fan, you know, because and then classes, you have to pull classes because they can't see on the chalkboard because there isn't enough lighting. And this is what they're jumping all around on the back and going on. Oh, so many schools. Oh, so many this. Oh, so many that. Oh, so many the other. And it's so disgusting, very, very disgusting when we talk about all these state-of-the-art schools, but you only see the art, you don't see the state. I don't know where is the state. And it's very disgusting. Operator, are you finding those for us? So I think we'll just have to move on, and we'll show you that at a later stage, because we're having a little bit of difficulty there getting those schools. But Mark, this is what is happening with education. But we have to talk, Mark, about this grade 6 assessment. Before we go into that, to dissect that, I must first of all congratulate our pupils who did extremely well. As a matter of fact, all of our pupils, the 15,000, whatever number it was, they all did extremely well. We have to accept the fact that everybody can't move at the same pace. We have different developmental stages. And so there are some of our children who did extremely, extremely well, and they were placed at our national schools. There are some who were placed at other junior secondary schools, and there are some who were placed at junior secondary schools. And of course, we must say thank you to our teachers who would have worked with those pupils from nursery school right up all the way to grade 6. And yes, up new all the way. But you know what I'm finding strange, Mark, is that, and you would probably notice this too, and many of our viewers would notice this too. When I wrote what we call common entrance, then I was able to secure 587 marks. That was my score. But that score couldn't carry me to QC. I couldn't get to QC with that score. But I'm seeing now that 487 marks is taking you to QC. Your thoughts, Mark?
I mean, first and foremost, I must congratulate our 15,000 students who did the NGSA examination. It's a very difficult examination. It's a very stressful examination. In my personal opinion, the examination should be abolished because it put too much burden on our children to select their future, to have their future determined. at the age of 11. I must also extend congratulations to our teachers because I know despite the circumstances they face, they go above and beyond. They face mosquitoes, they face rats, they face bats, they face flooded schools.
Snakes.
And despite
Snakes.
all of that, snakes, and despite all of that, they put 110% in, despite they only being given 10% increase. And so I must extend congratulations. Very hard work by our teachers, very hard work by our students. But having said that, the scoring of the common entrance leaves much to desire. The scoring of the NGSA leaves much to desire. And there are lots of questions that have arisen out of this NGSA result. I'm quite sure we'll go into it in a little bit more detail, correct? So I won't actually go into it in very much detail, but I'll give an overarching description of what the NGSA represents. I remember it's only a week or a week and a half ago, Priya came out and said she's defending. She wants to stand in defense of baby Skello. And we all agreed, the entire Ghana agreed, that that was just a political move. And we see that they'll be getting desperate as it comes closer to the election. And they'll be having political moves. As a result, I think this is not just an NGSA examination. This is a manipulation of a national examination for political benefits. Because I'm absolutely shocked. I'm absolutely shocked that over a period of 5 years, the marks could have actually risen by 14 percentage points. That's absolutely beyond what is expected by international standards. And that's absolutely unbelievable when you consider that the funding and the kind of infrastructure and the kind of investments we have in education is minimal, very, very minimal. So it's absolutely questionable. So my comments on the NGSA is congrats to the teachers, congrats to the kids, but PPP has to do much more to convince me that that exam wasn't manipulated for political motives.
Well, Mark, you were saying just the same thing that some of us are saying, and I'm convinced. I am convinced that that was manipulated because of the fact that when we look at the way those scores were awarded, it is always it's two things that they're trying to do. One, they're trying to keep or avoid poor people children from going into some schools because they're putting this point. Why can't we have rounded numbers as our scores? Why can't our scores be a rounded number? Why can't the score be a rounded number? Why you always have to have a point something and a point something? And that point something is to separate some people from the some children from the others. And we shouldn't be taught when you talk about one Guyana, when you preach one Guyana, you ought to practice it. But we don't see that happening. So you have a point something separating somebody and a point something separating somebody. But like you said, we will get down to the bottom of that. And I heard a young man saying when we drop the scores, and he was using all kind of fancy talks there to talk about how they arrive at this and how they arrive at that. But when you drop the scores, the children perform better. I don't know when you drop the scores, the children will perform better. I don't know I don't know how you arrived at that. But I remember there were scores of 600 and something. And now we down to 400 and something, and it's a big hullabaloo. And I'm hearing best results ever in the history of this country. Ah, so what happened to 600 and something? That wasn't good results. What happened to 500 and something? Those weren't good results. Something is wrong with somebody. But I noticed I'm trying to figure. I can't remember what was the name of um the viewer who was saying there what they want with AC. He said AC for what? When the rain gonna cool them down because all the roofs leaking, which is a fact. Which is a fact. But we don't want our children to be going through that. We don't want them to go through that at all, at all, at all. We don't want our children to go through that. Our children must be comfortable, very, very comfortable. And we don't have that happening here. I guess when we see what is happening at North Romville, especially in the labs and so on, when you see some of those furnishing that they have there, you'll understand what we're talking about with that. But then we got I see Sharma Melville saying at his time it was 600 or 525. That was the ceiling score. 600 or 525. But now our ceiling score is 484, what, 487 something, point something something something. And the troubling part there, Mark, is that we heard that this child secured perfect scores in all of them. So maybe the perfect scores had, point something and point something, because her thing was 487 point something something something. I don't know how it got there if it's a perfect score, but that's okay. That's another part of the story. But Mark, we have to talk about, while we talk about education, and we have to lament on education, because without education, our people are doomed. Without education, you're going to have much more poverty than we already have here. Without education, we're going to have many more teenage pregnancies, many more young men lying in the streets, many more police shooting people down the streets. So we have to lament on the fact that education is important, and it must be first and foremost, and given that kind of priority when we set out to do anything. We talk about education again, the textbooks, wrong information in the textbooks. The multiplication tables, wrong. The information about the indigenous people, incorrect. They had to pull it off the shelf. All these things, when you look at what is happening again, the gears are not moving fast enough for the PPP. No wonder they in all the shambles and the confusion, the chaos, everything there. Everything there got to go over to your baby health. We got to go there. We have seen a number of hospitals being constructed. We have seen some of them being commissioned. But when we talk about the manpower to man those institutions, it's like zero. Your thing, Mark?
Well, to be honest, when you devising a plan in terms of developing any sector, whether or not the education sector or the health sector, you have to not only devise a plan in terms of the development of the infrastructure, but you also have to devise a plan in terms of how we can expand the human resources, how we can maximize the human resources. It would appear that people just went about for political gains, for political points, to erect hospitals that they call first class. But a hospital is as good as the healthcare professionals providing service in the hospital. And as a result, in building these hospitals, without a clear plan, without a clear directive as to how they're going to actually have manpower in these hospitals, they are forced to actually put pressure on doctors to work unreasonable hours. We all know for a fact that we have to rest, we have to sleep, and sleeping is a very important process. Sleeping helps the brain to recover. Sleeping helps the brain to appraise what we would have gone through that particular day. Sleeping helps the brain to rejuvenate for a new day. So to have these doctors working on healthy hours, on exhausted bodies, and on exhausted brains, they're actually putting doctors that are at risk to patients. Are at risk to patients, can make horrible mistakes, can make tragic mistakes that can result in serious injury or even death. And this is just down to the fact that PPP hasn't thought out how they're going to actually provide manpower in these hospitals. They just simply went through the process of erecting hospitals. And then at the completion of these erection of the hospitals, some light bulb click. Some light bulb came on and said, wow, you have to have healthcare professionals in these hospitals. So they have to stretch the healthcare professionals that they have. We know for a fact that GPAC is understaffed. We know for a fact that in 2024, over 1,400 nurses left to go overseas. We know that for a fact. We know that for a fact that doctors are following the nurses. We know for a fact that physiotherapists are following the nurses. We know for a fact that occupational therapists are following the nurses. Radiographers are following the nurses. Medical technologists are following the nurses. So in other words, we have a healthcare sector which is severely understaffed. But despite it being understaffed, people decided to erect more hospitals and stretching the understaffed healthcare sector, hoping that they can actually provide a service in these hospitals. But they wouldn't provide a safe service. And I can foresee lots of patients going to have severe injury or even death as a result.
Them to work for long hours. Doctors are crying out that they're asking them to work for long hours. And we know
In
what
those
could happen.
situations.
We know what could happen in those situations. If we put our doctors to work 12 and 14 and 16 hours
without having a break, I don't know. Something is happening.
I mean, a break is critically important for anyone, whether or not it's a child, whether or not it's a doctor, whether or not it's a nurse. A break is absolutely critical. But what we have in Ghana is that these doctors, the healthcare professionals, are not represented by a union. And we were talking earlier about the fact that the government wanted teachers not to have a union. And you see the reason why they don't want them to have a union, because they want to be able to control them, overwork them, and abuse them, because they do not have a union that will represent them. And the most that the doctors can actually do is complain to the Minister of Health, who is part of the problem, complain to the Chief Medical Officer, who's part of the problem. So it's very, very sad and unfortunate is that the impoverished masses are the ones who's going to actually face the consequences of doctors being overstretched, of healthcare professionals being overstressed. And the consequences are dire. And the consequences may very well include severe injury or even death.
I don't know what is happening. I don't know what is happening.
But
But
this is we're having
we're having some difficulty. I noticed in the studio we're having some feedback coming from somewhere. But we'll continue with the program. Um, Again, the PPP seem to be doing this, they're doing that, doing everything they're doing, and they're not sure about what they're doing. We notice the hospitals that are being built. But if you look at where many of those hospitals are being built, they are being built in areas where their families, their friends, and their favorites are. We saw the one at Bath, and then there's a hospital right at Fort Wellington. Now you're constructing a new hospital, which we don't have a problem with, creating more hospitals, constructing more hospitals, but you're leaving the ones that are already established. You're leaving them to fall apart. You're not doing anything to upgrade them, but you're building other hospitals. If you were, competent persons and persons who are well educated would think about enabling the existing hospitals that you have, ensuring that they are well provided with all the equipment that they need, as against leaving that one and moving to construct another hospital. But people still have to visit this one that you're neglecting. But of course, that's their way of, as old people would say, siphoning off the monies. That's their way of doing that. And so if you were to rehabilitate and so on, you can't steal as much. But if you were to put up a new building, then yes, while some of the materials going to the hospital, some will be transferred somewhere else. And that's what they always do. And this is what is happening in these, with all these constructions that we're doing. I'm not sure what's happening with the North Rumville that I want to show you, but this is what is happening when they're constructing these buildings. And Mark, we're going to witness, come after September, well, not after September, but we've witnessed before then how many nurses and doctors have left this shore. And I'm talking between 2020 and 2025. We have witnessed how many teachers have left this shore between 2020 and 2025. Policemen are on the run. Our technical men are on the run. They're heading to Barbados, they're heading to Grenada, they're heading to all over the place. And so when we need our technical people here, we can't have them because they're going to greener pastures. Because here you have to be in a line as if you're a slave, and you have to be holding your hands and as if you have a bowl there begging for something and collecting the drips, while other persons are getting lavish contracts and they don't even know one iota of what they're doing there. And so this here is a matter of concern, and Guyanese people will have to speak out about these things. But as we go on, Mark, we need to talk about the not only the corruption with regards to constructing buildings, but we need to talk about the corruption in every aspect of these ministries. You got the police force, which falls under Home Affairs. Corruption. We look at what is happening in the public in the public service. Corruption. Even in the Ministry of Finance, corruption. And still persons are saying, oh, there's no corruption. Oh, there isn't this. Oh, there isn't that. Oh, there isn't the other. I noticed before you come in, Mark, I noticed persons have been reaching out to me from the US, and they're saying it's been over 8 months they can't access a Guyana passport. Guyanese are saying they can't access a Guyana passport. They have applied several times. They've applied since when, and they can't get their passports. I don't know what is happening with Utah there at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Everything is a long, drawn-out process, and now it's even worse, where I think they are holding some of those passports because they want to give it to their friends and their families so that they can come home to vote at elections come September 1st. But you know what? These people are saying, we're not going to wait on them. We're going to ensure that we get travel documents. And so you there at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, do something so that our people can have their documents to travel. They want to travel. Ensure that they can travel. Your take, Mark. We're not hearing anything from you. I'm not sure if you're muted.
Somebody mute my mic. It's absolutely unbelievable, totally unbelievable that someone has to wait 8 months for a passport. That can't be justified. That cannot be defended. For the fact that the world has become global and people travel, and to travel they need these passports. So passports aren't an accessory. Passports are actually absolute necessity. And to wait 8 months to get the passport is just evidence the fact that they're either incompetent, that is one, or they either have a scheme. And the scheme is of such that if you cannot have a passport, then you cannot come back home to vote for the 2025 election. And that is what we call disenfranchisement. And that should not be acceptable. And that is very much undemocratic. The other issue you alluded to, Coretta, is corruption. It is not by chance that Transparency International give this government 39 out of 100. It's not by chance. I remember when Transparency International provided this corruption index. Jack Jill came out and he said they don't like him. It's all political. It's because it's PPP. And the persons who are undertaking this process in determining what score you get, they're all political. But what he failed to realize, the persons who are actually undertaking the process are internationally recognized. They work in international institutions like the World Bank and the UN, and they gather information on a country to make that determination. And as a result, they have concluded, and rightfully so, they have concluded that Guyana is corrupt. I remember quite clearly when the Americans said that there is corruption in the police force. Nandalal jumped out without pomposity and said, give me the evidence, prove it. The Americans are talking absolute nonsense. And no sooner had he opened his mouth to speak garbage, did the Americans provide evidence that a sitting superintendent, a senior person in the police force, was involved in the transshipment of 4.4 tons of cocaine. No sooner had they said that. But we cannot ignore that fact. We cannot ignore the fact. And we have to relate it to Jack Dio. Because we saw the evidence. We saw the video. We saw the recording. When Jack Dio was being interviewed. And he said Sue is his best friend. And he was describing illegal acts that he's prepared to do so as to get contracts for this supposed contractor who was just essentially an actor. So it is quite evident that they're corrupt. We saw for a fact that Irfan Ali, on becoming Minister of Housing, within a matter of months, he erected a mansion with swimming pool. And when questioned as to where he get the funding from, he argued that his father, he inherited it from his father. But if his father is a multi-billionaire, as he's describing, why is his mother living in a 2 or 3 bedroom house? She's supposed to be living in a mansion. Why was she living in a house before? So we know for a fact that there is corruption. We can speak of Mae Thomas. We can speak of Mae Toussaint Thomas, who was caught up in the corruption with the Mohammeds. And she is a sitting member of the PPP. We can speak of her and the fact that she is corrupt, and the fact that PPP, despite the fact that she's corrupt, made a decision to continue to embrace her because they pretty well know that they're all corrupt. And as they would say, a bird of a feather flock together. A corrupt bird of a feather will obviously flock together, and they flock in Freedom House.
And this is it's so disgusting. And again, these are the people who like to talk about, they like to condemn everybody else. And they have it right there in front of them, and they're not seeing Mae Thomas, like you mentioned, a permanent secretary whose visa was cancelled. And I don't know, and it moved beyond that, where she was elected again on their central exec. But that's blindfolded, that's blindfolded. But we've seen them now attacking. They continue to say that this Mohammed guy, Azruddin, is not a threat to them. But yet we're seeing them doing all sorts of things to this young man. I mean, it's not my business. But if we're going to talk about, like they talk about one Guyana, then everybody must be given the same treatment. If you're talking about everybody got the right to run for any position according to the Constitution, it's our democratic right to decide whether I want to run for a president, I want to form a political party or anything. But we are seeing that the gears are not moving fast enough for the PPP. Hence the reason for desperation. And that is why they're attacking left, right, and center. Everybody they're attacking, except finding the faults with themselves. And Mark, you would remember, it was this same Mohammed's guy, the same Mohammed's family, who they were in bed with. It was the same Mohammeds who had loaned Irfan their vehicle. You remember that vehicle that he was using?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? It was the same Mohammeds who they issued firearm license for very high-powered weapons. It was the same Mohammeds who Irfan, who's playing now that he can't recall, who had conversation with Azruddin, reference the importation of the Lamborghini that they're now claiming he defrauded the government. He defrauded the government, but you were part and parcel of it. I mean, how much more do we want to see? How much more do we want to see? And if they can deny these facts that are in front of our eyes, then you don't want to talk about 2 or 3 years ago. But I want to say to our viewers, if you don't remember anything else on September 1st, we must remember Adriana Young. If we don't remember anything else, just a couple of days today was the graduation at the school that Adriana attended. Today was the graduation. And so there was Adriana's mom holding a photograph of Adriana with her graduation cap and her gown hung on the side of it. Today we saw that. And these are the people, the PPP government, who talk about how much they love and how much they care. And this is a little child, 11 years old, went missing, later found dead, and Irfan Ali would have said to this nation, they've already done all that they had to do. You know, as if that can bring that child alive again. We remember the Henry boys. We remember the Henry boys. You know, we will leave no stone unturned. Well, I guess the stone will have either been left or the stone still turning. The Henry boys. We had Harish Singh there. And so we must shout for these people. We had the 3 that were slaughtered in Linden a couple of years ago, and then 2 just recently. In addition to that, we had a young man who was shot in his eye. These are the acts of the PPP. So you know what? Again, the gears are not moving fast enough, because the excuses and the excuses and the excuses. And when it's not murder, it's abuse to our women. When it's not murder. Mark, your take.
Well, I could just imagine the pain and the agony.
Operator, could we have that photograph? Sorry, Mark, with
the pain and the agony Adriana Young's mom would have been experiencing. Today is a day, or today should have been a day of celebration. Today should have been a day of excitement. Today should have been a day where they're taking photographs. Today should be a day where she would have been embracing her friends, saying goodbye as they all go on separate ways to go to different secondary schools. But unfortunately, Adriana was not there. All we had was a photo of Adriana. And the reason behind that is because Adriana was, in my opinion, murdered and covered up. And because she's poor, and because she is without political connection, and because she doesn't have the necessary finances, that means that debt will always bother them, and that debt will go unsolved. And it's very, very sad. So I completely concur that as we cast our votes on the 1st of September, we remember Adriana. But we not only remember Adriana, remember the 3 that died in Linden 3 years ago. Remember the 2 that died this year in Linden. Remember the Henry boys. Remember Harish Singh. Remember the over 1,300 that died during COVID. Remember all the deaths on the PPP. And if you actually want to have a country where deaths are not prevalent, where where unexpected deaths are not prevalent, then we have to remove the party of deaths for power. PP has to be removed from power. And even as you vote, you recall all those deaths. We can recall the corruption. We can recall the victimization, recall the discrimination, recall all the things that characterize this PPP. I will now talk about the Mohammeds. I have no brief for the Mohammeds. I've never seen the Mohammeds in person. I've never met them. And I'm not eager to actually meet them. But I strongly believe that when you have a system that is being used to abuse an individual, we have no choice but to come out in defense of that individual, despite the fact that individual may not be our cup of tea. Orphanali, the clinical clown, the complete fool, is to argue that Muhammad is a threat to security, is a threat to our financial security, is a threat to our to our borders, and as a result, they have to take steps to minimize that threat because that threat will actually affect us. As a result, they argue his alleged contacts with Maduro puts him at a position where he will sell Guyana out. But I want to remind PPP, because it seemed to have a case of selective amnesia. It was Ramataro on the PPP who invited Maduro in 2013 to Guyana. Isn't Ramatara a threat to security or financial security on our borders? It was Jack Dio who was on record describing providing a channel out for the Venezuelans. Isn't he a threat to security? Isn't he a threat to our borders? No, they wouldn't say that simply because it's coming from PPP. But you have to be absolutely consistent, and to see if they even go forward, where they have infected GCOM to the extent that Claudette Singh, who has lost all integrity, who has lost all confidence, who the masses don't believe anything she says, is to come out and say the Jaguar cannot be used by the Mohammeds. When the Roar Party in previous election used the Jaguar and there was no question about it. And to highlight her stupidity, to evidence her stupidity, she didn't actually check a book of biology or a book of something that will describe animals to see that the picture did not represent a jaguar. The picture represents a leopard. So as a result, having brought that to her attention, she had to reverse her decision. But as a judge, you have to be very critical when you're making judgment. You have to make sure you have all the evidence available to you. You have to be able to actually critically analyze that evidence. And clearly she did not critically analyze what was in front of her. She was acting based on political instructions. And it's a very, very sad thing. And it begs the question, if she cannot be fair to the Mohammeds in terms of a party logo, what kind of confidence would we have in her being fair for the elections? We are also reminded of the fact that she did not allow the commission to determine the GCOM preparedness for the election. She discussed it with her CEO, and then she supposedly informed Orford Ali that they prepared for it when that process should have been undertaken by the commission. So all in all, I don't think too many people have confidence in Claudette Singh. And the sooner we see the back of her, happier we're gonna actually be. And I'm very, very concerned that because of her, because of her actions, her evident actions in always supporting PPP, she may try to manipulate this 2025 elections.
Well, you know, Mark, we cannot forget Claudette Singh. Claudette Singh was the woman who said to us during the recount that all of those ballots that had no accompanying documents will not be counted. Claudette Singh said that to us. The next day, at about midday or just after midday, there was a change in that decision. So again, political instructions she's been following. And she, as you know, quite a lot of us had a lot of respect for this woman as a retired judge. But we are now beginning to wonder whether some of the judgments she passed while she sat on the bench there, whether those judgments were indeed judgments that went according to law. And some persons might have been wrongly sentenced or wrongfully sentenced when Claudette Singh was there. Claudette Singh is no good and she must go. Because we can't trust her with all the manipulations that we've seen. We can't trust her with this. But again, let's return to Adriana. While we are going to remember Adriana, we have to remember Quindon Bacchus and Orrin Boston and the 20 lives at Madia. We got to remember them. We got to remember all of those, and we must remember Claudette Singh because she was part and parcel of all the craziness that we're having in this country. If it weren't for Claudette Singh and her foolishness, Guyana would have been in a better position now. Guyanese would have been enjoying life at a better rate. Their living standards would have been higher. But Claudette Singh and her concubines and her friends, I don't know why I always talk about her concubines, but Claudette Singh and her friends and family, the 3Fs, they're responsible for the state that we're in right now. But we want to talk a little about this black tank situation. I mean, in 2024, operator, could you show us those black tanks? In 2024, we are seeing all these black tanks. In 2023, we are seeing these black tanks, and you'll just roll the pictures. In 2022, we are seeing these black tanks, but all of a sudden, this is the second set of black tanks we are seeing being distributed to citizens. I mean, nothing is wrong with giving our citizens black tanks. But where you're finding these monies now to roll out hundreds of black tanks to give to residents? And mind you, we have a sweet girl there. Well, not sure, sweet girl, sweet boy, whatever. Susan Rodriguez, who's the minister with responsibility for water, housing and water. But she deals with water. She's always pumping up herself there about, bet you didn't know. We put on a well here. We put on this. But how you talking and you're pumping up the water situation in Guyana, that you're giving clean water, you're doing this and you're doing this, but you're still loading black tanks, which is saying to us that we don't have a steady flow of water coming through our taps. That is why we got to store them in black tanks. That is why you have to distribute black tanks. And if you're saying that you dug wells here and you dug wells there and you did all of these fancy things, we don't have need for black tanks, because as far as I could remember, if you travel to the US, you don't see in those homes there or in those apartments, you don't see black tanks. You don't see black tanks being stored. Mark, you live in the UK.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not. You got a black tank at the back of your yard? No.
Absolutely not.
So it means that we're just hearing about all these fancy talks, but in actual fact, the talks ain't really fancy. That's why we got to be distributing black tanks. And you see where our resident, look where that resident is living. And so he has to move that black tank there by himself. All these black tanks, black tanks, black tanks. We had a series of black tanks being distributed on going up to Hillfoot there on the Linden Suzaik Highway, Yarra Cabra somewhere there. They had a whole set of black tanks. Kwame McCoy was there and they're distributing a whole lot of black tanks. But my thing is, where are you finding the monies now? Citizens, don't be fooled. What they couldn't do for you then, they're hustling to do for you now as a form of bribery to get you to vote for them. You big and you have sense, like some persons would say. And yes, Claudette Singh must go. It's too corrupt. Claudette Singh must go. But then we have to come to this other one. Operator, I'm sure you have that clip there with the reporter yesterday. We were talking about valuing our women with the reporter yesterday, with the president, one with the presidents. I mean, it is disgusting the way we treat our women folk. We rape and sodomize them, and then we instead of surrounding the victim, we surround the person who commit the act. You all remember Dharamlal? Several young ladies, and all of those young ladies were shut down. And mind you, the women in the PPP, not a word coming out of their mouth. Not a word coming out of their mouths. We've seen a regional chairman assaulting his wife. He's before the court for assaulting his wife. The PPP, tight-lipped on it. So many of them we've seen harassing and assaulting their wives. We heard what the Berry talk about, slapping and stripping a reporter. And then yesterday we witnessed, well, of course, we had Kwame there who assaulted a member of parliament right around on the lawns of parliament there, on the outskirts of parliament. Kwame assaulting an opposition MP. And then you had the same Dharamlal telling an opposition MP that she wants a dildo. And then yesterday we saw again this kind of manifestation, as if this thing is some tea that they share around in the PPP. Mark, your comments on that before we get that video.
It is absolutely unbelievable in a country where 50% of the population is women. So we can reasonably argue or extrapolate that 50% of the electorate would be women. And being in an election season, you would think our finale would have been a bit wiser and not do anything as to alienate that 50%. But as you clearly describe it, as you clearly characterize it, he's a president. He is a clinical dunce. He is a fool. He has no political awareness whatsoever. All you can see is that the reported journalist was asking him very difficult questions, questions that were germane as it relates to having a lobbyist saying the name of
I
the
said
Mohammeds.
period.
But 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 even though he's aware of the fact that there's an election, he could not have helped himself. And we see the evidence is consistent. You just have to ask Irfan Ali a very difficult question that he cannot answer. And you're going to see he turns into a pit bull. And the question that Guyanese need to ask themselves, do we want to have a pit bull as a president? Do we want to have someone who's rabid as a president? Do we want to have someone who's going to jump to your jugular as a president? You want to have someone who's controlled. You want to have someone who can have an understanding of the situation and the circumstance. You have to have someone who can recognize when the people are concerned and giving them adequate answers, providing them with important answers. But the president hasn't those abilities, hasn't those abilities to actually understand, hasn't the emotional intelligence to actually understand that in an election cycle, he cannot conduct himself the way he conducted himself yesterday. The fact is, PPP is paying a lobbyist company 300,000 US a year to stay in the name of Guyanese. You just have to be a political opponent or be considered a political threat, and the lobbyist will be paid to pay a congressman who is going to make a tweet. And if you notice, the congressman didn't make a tweet from his work Twitter account. He made it from his personal account, so that's his personal opinion. And it does not reflect the opinion of the congressman as a congressman per se. And that's what people have to understand and recognize. But it's a very, very sad day, when you have an installed president who is of such pomposity that he feels the need to actually attack a journalist. It was only recently that had a report where the race concerns, I read that in one of the newspaper, race concerns about journalists being attacked by politicians in Guyana. And that report was evidencing not only Arfan Ali, that report was evidencing Barajakju, because he has a history. He definitely has a history. But before I go, I just want to make this other point about the black drums. It's very important to make this point about the black drums. I was talking to a relative the other day, and she was saying, I have to go now because I have to go and bathe my skin before they cut off the water. Imagine living in a country where you are inconvenient by the cutting off of water. And she went further, I can't bathe upstairs, I have to bathe downstairs because water pressure is not that high to take it upstairs. And as a result, that's the reason why they give you these black drums. They want to bribe you. But I want the people to recognize this is not a bribe. This is evidence of people incompetence in providing you potable water through your taps. And even when water comes through the taps, it looks like mobby. It has worms. It has dust. It looks absolutely disgusting. But yet people would actually argue that Guyana is a Caribbean Dubai. Guyana is going places. Guyana is making progress. And anybody that actually stand up to be critical of them, to use the argument that you're trying to stop the progress. So to those people with the black drums, take the black drums, but just recognize these black drums are evidence of people incompetence in providing you potable water.
You know, Mark, as we're talking about those black tanks. Now, those black tanks, when you have them, now they're just giving you the black tanks. Now, where the fittings to go with those tanks? It means that you're putting people under another level of stress because they got to find monies now to buy all the pipes and the connectors and the whatever else, and then you have to pay a plumber to install the black tanks. If you're going to give people a black tank, then give them with the fittings and get the people there to do the hooking up for persons. You're already paying them next to nothing. I mean, it's so disgusting. So very, very disgusting. But folks, look, when they bring the black tanks to you, collect the black tanks. Come September 1st, you know where you're putting your X. You know right where you're putting your ex. But we have to talk a little more about this disrespect to women. Priya Manik Chan was disrespected the other day by the president. You remember the 5:30 meeting?
Yeah.
She was disrespected when he started calling her name and saying, you did this, you did that, you said this to me, and made her look like a little girl. And here is it, because the reporter was asking him the questions that he just could not, well, it's not that he couldn't answer the questions, but he had to be very mindful with answering the questions because, of course, Jagdi would have put some good slap around his head. So he refused to answer the questions. And when the reporter kept pressing him, he resorted to abusing. I mean, how do we go on? This is the man that all of them talking about, give him a second term. I wonder where James Bond was yesterday. I wonder if he saw that. I'm wondering whether Sandy saw that. I am wondering whether my good friend Geeta saw that. Huh? That's a woman who was being abused there by the president. And it's not only what he said to her, but the manner with which he walked away, and then his bodyguard slammed the door. I mean, this is the man who y'all talking about giving a second term. Then he can kick you, some of you. I mean, I have to say it as plain as it is. That's the man y'all want to give a second term? Huh? Critics abuse Priya. I mean, I got to say that this is some kind of coffee that they're sharing there. This got to be some kind of coffee. So when they're not through with abusing men, then they're gone to women. But you know what I liked? I liked the way that young lady, Svetlana, stood up to him. And she didn't back down like what he did to a couple of other young men who, when they spoke, he said, you sit down, shut your mouth. She stood up there to him and she continued to ask the questions. And she was very, very respectful. She was saying, and sir, and sir, and sir. She was very respectful. So we are seeing a clear distinction with the way half brought up and no brought up. There's a clear distinction there. Operator, I'm not sure what's happening. Something is saying low battery. I'm not sure. It is showing a clear distinction as to those who are rounded and those who are not rounded. And it's disgusting. And we have to take account of all of this. We must remember that come September 1st. We must remember that. We must remember that come September 1st. It is annoying. Operator, do you have that tape that you can show us? It is really, really disgusting. Really, really disgusting. Could we play the tape if we're not doing whatever? Could we play that tape? It is so disgusting that you have a head of state who doesn't have respect for women. And we have to pound this. We have to ensure that we speak about it every time. Women must be respected. Our women must be respected. Our women must be respected. We have to sing that song all the time, because if we don't, more will be done to us. I mean, if I were in that reporter's position, I might have responded to him differently. But I'm happy that young lady was there, and that young lady was saying, yes, sir, and sir, what about, and she was going on. We must respect our Guyanese women. We must not feel that you can treat them anywhere. And coming from that level, I want to condemn the actions of Irfan Ali, and every right-thinking Guyanese must do that. Must condemn him. Yes, I know, wherever Rakush Bush, wherever your name, that, and he's saying, oh, he will get a second term. You're right, he will get a second term because all y'all want to thief the Guyanese people money. Operator, I think we're having it now. Could we turn up the volume just as a refresher for our viewers to hear? We're having no volume there. She is a Guyanese woman, and that's the way you're treating her. A Guyanese woman is being treated like that. I mean, how do we do that? She's a mother, she's a wife, she's a daughter. How do we do that? If you can't answer questions, don't go out there. You sit down at Freedom House where you got critics and them other crazy ones. Don't go out there. Because when you go out there, the reporters will ask you questions. The same thing they did to this other young lady who's the president of the press association, Nazima. The same thing they did to Nazima. Look, we have to ensure that our young women are protected all the time and every time. We must stand up and speak out against these kinds of nonsense. And then while we're moving off from that, we recognize the 2 young persons died during this week, 2 of them. One, a young lady died because she could not afford to pay for dialysis treatment. Mark? Couldn't afford to pay for dialysis treatment.
Wow.
A young man died because he wanted some funding to have a lung transplant, to go overseas to have a lung transplant. 2 young people cried out for help, and this heartless government couldn't do anything for them. Viewers, if nothing else, I want you to remember these 2 young people too. 2 families are in mourning because of an uncaring government. $45,000 she had to pay for dialysis treatment. And if they were given the kind of assistance, they would have been alive today. 2 young people yesterday, 2. Just the same way 5 died in a helicopter crash, and they can't tell us yet what was the reason for that crash. 20 died in a fire. Children are dying at our hospitals. And then you want to talk about progress and progress and progress. Can you measure a couple of roads that you're doing, all them slim roads that you're doing? Can you measure that as against a life? That's what you want to do? That's what you want to do? Mark, your take.
It is very, very sad when a young person dies. And it makes it doubly sad when 2 young person dies. The fact is, Critic was given over $800,000 to build a Bellevue, something at Bellevue. And to date, that's supposed to have been completed in August. August is just about a few weeks away. Critic has not done anything substantial in terms of building of what he's supposed to be building. But because Critic is politically affiliated with PPP, that $800,000 will go into his pockets, and he will live a big life simply because he speaks on behalf of the government. When you compare and contrast that with a young lady who needs dialysis 3 times a week at $45,000, and she had to die because of want of dialysis, you have to ask the question, if you have one Guyana. You have to ask the question if there's equality in Guyana. You have to ask the question if Guyana is a country, is an absolutely real place. Clearly, Guyana cannot be a real place where you have your young people dying for the want of less than 250 US a week. That cannot be accepted. And this young man who needed the lung transplant, I don't know the details of it, but I would want to believe a government that was caring would have actually explored all avenues to make sure that that young man gets his lung transplant. But because the young man is not politically affiliated, because the young lady is not politically affiliated, they will simply die, just like Adriana Young. And that's a very, very sad thing. I remember the president, the installed president, the clinical dunce, went to the Middle East and he was being interviewed, and questions were being asked of him about healthcare and the quality of the healthcare being provided. And he said, we have a first class healthcare. We have a first class primary care, first class secondary care, first class tertiary care, world class. But yet, young people are dying for the want of basic treatment. How could that be acceptable? How could that be acceptable? How could that young lady could have been allowed to reach a stage where she needs dialysis, when intervention could have been done earlier to make sure she don't actually get to that stage? But PPP just don't care. And the voters, the electorate, have to pay attention to what PPP is doing. They cannot ignore it. They cannot say give them a second chance, because it will give them a second chance to kill Tom. It will give them a second chance to kill Peter. It will give them a second chance to kill Sati. Will give them a second chance to kill Adriana Henry Boys. You cannot give them a second chance. They have to be out, because the monies are supposed to be going into the healthcare to make sure that the healthcare is world class is being pocketed by the PPP. They're building all these fancy hospitals, and they're saying these hospitals are world class. But these hospitals are being staffed by persons who don't know what world class actually means. And that's a very, very sad reality. That's a very sad reality. I extend my condolences to the relatives of those two young persons who unfortunately died. And I want to tell them that they did not have to die. And even though they weren't in a position to prevent their relatives' death, their loved ones' death, they are in a position to make sure that no other person dies. And that position they have, and that position they can take with their right index finger as they vote on the 1st of September.
As we speak, it's very, very touching, because these two young people had a whole lot of life in front of them. And their lives were just snuffed out just like that, simply because their families are poor and ordinary citizens. When we talk about all the wealth that we got, we got some ministers. They got some ministers who some of them became ministers in 2020. And if you see the kind of mansions they have, but our people have got to suffer and die. You go check the house that the president's got. Go to Lenore and check what he has there. You go into Middle Street and check Kwamina Street and check what he's got there. You check everywhere else that Barrett Jagdi and all the others got. But our people, because they're poor, because they're ordinary, they have to die. But I want to remind our viewers, for Guyana to grow, the PPP must go. And come September 1st, we must stamp that there on September 1st. We can't allow this to go. But let me share this last one with you. Operator, a viewer is telling us that Bath Hospital and Enmore, they are going to be open pretty soon. But I hope that they are properly furnished, with not only the furnishing, but they have the manpower there to man those hospitals. Look, Operator, I think you have Baracara there. Just last week, I think it was, we were in Baracara, and we know that every time we do something, they're following us after. Shortly after, you see they're walking behind us. Last week, we were in Baracara, and we went there. We spoke to the residents there at the community health, at the health center. We spoke with the residents there. And of course, every time the opposition has got to go out there to meet with our people, and we have to use some government building or something, it's a whole lot of if and buts and all kind of thing. And people are very scared, because they know that the kind of victimization will come after them. But you know what? When we went there, the pupils from grade 5 were writing their exams. And so we went through, we did not disturb them. We ensured that the noise was very, very, very minimal. But today, school is still on, Today, we saw the Minister of Agriculture and a whole team going into Barocaro. And to my surprise, you know what they did? They used the school, the pupils there were choked up in a corner. Some had no school, and they used the entire school to keep their political meeting during school hours. During school hours. I mean, Priya always jump out there to talk about, oh, the teachers were on strike because they got instructions from GTU, and GTU is politically motivated, and the children lost how many contact hours. Priya didn't know today about the contact hours that the children lost. She didn't know this one today. And this is what these people do all the time. They're so blatant and uncaring with what they do. They went into Barocaro. Could we have the other photograph there, operator? They went into Barocaro there. And I mean, it is disgusting when we want to drag and force our children to do things that they ought not to do. It is disgusting, very, very disgusting. And I'm hoping that we will not have a repeat of this. You know, Barocaro is not a so much privileged community. And so the PPP feel that they will use the opportunity to go and bribe them. You know, they went there, they bribed a few, and they gave them a couple of contracts to clean the river, a part of the river, some $5 million and $10 million contract to dig a little gutter here and a little gutter there. The normal thing that they're doing around the place. They're not getting those huge $500 million and $800 million contract. Little contract, they give a 1 and a 2, and then pull them as if, you know, we so much care about you, we love you, you notice what we are doing for you. And so they went in there. We want to have the pictures with the Minister of Agriculture, please. So we had them going in there, and I found this is so very disgusting that this government will take our little children and put on red PPP t-shirts on them. Little children under the age of 11. No, this government has gone past mad people's stage, and this got to be desperation. This has got to be desperation. Now, these little 11-year-old children, they can't make any decision for themselves. The laws of Guyana says you got to be 18 years old to make any decision. Now, children under the age of 11 years old, all decked out in PPP red t-shirts and PPP caps. You know? I wonder where is Priya Manik-Chand? And that in itself is a form of bullying. And you know, we wonder why our children are behaving the way they behave at school and why they're bullying others, because people like Priya Manik-Chand and the whole side of them allowing it to happen to our people. They are allowing it to happen to our children. So when they allow that to happen to our children, what do you think the children will do? Huh? What do you think the children will do? And this fool, some fool here saying that the kids love having a new t-shirt and a new cap. Could you imagine that? Huh? That's the mentality about these people. That's their mentality. Huh? Desperation kicking in. Desperation kicking in. It is disgusting, very disgusting, that a big man like the Minister of Agriculture would use our little children to put on red t-shirts on them. It is very disgusting. Mark, your take on it.
Oh, boy. I was talking with a teacher the other day who's a very good friend of mine. And she brought to my attention a practice which occurs in school. And practices of such, if Priya Manik-Chand is visiting a school, the teachers are instructed to put the kids with torn uniform, to put the kids with dirty boots at the back, and the kids that have well-pressed uniform and expensive shoes are put in front to sit, because those are the ones that Priya Manik-Chand will actually engage. And I could not have believed what I was being told. But having now seen that PPP is prepared to displace our children, is prepared to cancel their education, all because they want to promote a political rally. It further convinces me that PPP are not only in a deplorable state as a party, that PPP is very desperate, because these actions are very desperate actions. And to even contemplate and to even try to justify having these kids wearing political outfits is absolutely shocking. And I remind people where children are abused. I remind people countries that abuse children in that way. North Korea, if Kim Il Jong is visiting, will have the kids on the streets, missing school, waving flags. Who is Kim Il Jong? A dictator. China will do the same thing. Will have the kids on the road waving flags if the president is out. Another dictator. The fact is, only dictators will abuse children, because this is a form of abuse. Having the kids dressed and decked out in PPP t-shirts and PPP caps, having them go through a process that they don't quite understand. How do you know how that will impact these kids moving forward? It will very much impact them, because this abuse will teach them that when you have power, that power should be forced on those who don't have power. That power should be forced on children. That power should be forced on the impoverished. That power should be forced on those marginalized. And it is absolutely shocking. And people should hang their heads in collective shame that they would have abused our children. And not only abused our children, foolish enough to take photographs and to take video to be displayed on social media so that the world will actually see. But for the rest of the world, I just want to tell you this. I just want to inform you of this, that PPP do not reflect what Guyanese are like. PPP is an anomaly, and that anomaly will be removed on the 1st of September. I cannot recall when President Granger was president, that he would have done something like this. I cannot recall that at all. So it's absolutely shocking. It would not have been done by Desmond Hayter either. So it's absolutely shocking. And people should hang their heads in collective shame.
Operator, could you put the first picture up with these little children? Yes, that one, thanks. Look at this picture here. These are not t-shirts that were made for these children. These are not t-shirts that were made for these children. Look at the two boys there with those two t-shirts. Why are we putting our children through this? I could understand the children come out there and they're waving some flag or something, but all of this is wrong because it happened during school hours. During school hours it happened. And you know, these are the people who always want to tell you about how you must walk. You know, they have no shame, absolutely no shame. If you were to ask to use that school, they would say, no, school is in session. But here it is. It's okay for them to go in there, put on PPP t-shirts on the children, put on PPP caps on the children, and have them posing for the world, not even blotting out their faces. And Priya Manikchand, she liked to talk about, did they get permission to pose these children? Did you get parental permission? I wonder if you got permission to post these. These people are ridiculous and they must go. The PPP must go. They came here, went to this place today and abused all the privileges that they got. Simply because the people who live in Barokaro are not so wealthy off in terms of having big fancy homes and you have a big fancy Prado and so on dropping you around the place and you got maids and so on, because these people are ordinary people, so you feel you can come and do anything. Barokarians, let me tell you, reject the PPP. Don't come September 1st. Vote them out. This kind of nonsense must not continue to happen. It must not continue to happen. I mean, I don't think I would have been so upset if these t-shirts were made to their size. These are adult t-shirts. Stop making our children adults. They're not adults. Stop making them adults. Stop forcing your way on them. Because when you force your way on our innocent children, they're going to feel that that's the right thing to do. And so they will force others to do all sorts of things. Evan Passad, you need to go to Freedom House. Stop meddling around here. Go look for that university at IFLUT. When you find it, then you must come into this class. This class is way above your level. Way, way above your level. So stop it. Don't come in here. I can understand you're frustrated because you can't do the multiplication. You can't do the addition. You can't put words to make a sentence. So go look for that university in IFLUT. Don't come here. But again, viewers, let me say to you, this kind of nonsense must stop. When we had mass games, let me tell Evan Passad, if that's your correct name, when we had mass games, the parents gave consent. They didn't drag them out like that. The parents gave consent. So when you don't know, don't talk. And when you meet Hamilton Green, make yourself available, and I can get Hamilton Green to meet with you so that he can put some sense in your head. Y'all too dotish, as far as I'm concerned. Go to Freedom House, wait for tomorrow and listen to Barra Jagdew. Go find critics. Don't come here to talk stupidness or to type stupidness in the comment section. But again, viewers, I want you to know that this here is wrong. And it will be wrong on all levels. Wrong on all levels. But before we go, Mark, I think you want to make some closing remarks just before I do a little bit before we go.
My closing remarks will be on the NGSA and these NGSA results, because I'm still trying to get my head around the numbers. How from 2020 to 2025 could we have 14 percentage points improvement in our children's performance, when international standards based on the World Bank is that it takes 10 years to achieve 5 percentage points? How is that possible? How is that possible when kids are universally known and get to be struggling with maths? For them to have a 55% pass rate and improvement by 29%, how is that possible? English at 69%, better than last year. Social studies, science, English, and maths, all in the 60s in terms of percentage. How is that possible? That's totally unbelievable. And when that is viewed in the context that we had COVID and our children were denied an education for 2 years, and when that's viewed in the context that 70 days were spent on a teacher strike because of PPP stupidity, it reduces that 5 years to 3 years, basically. All of this being achieved in 3 years. And when they have absolutely no aggressive policies, no groundbreaking policies that would have been enacted to explain these numbers, we have to beg the question, are these political numbers? Are these numbers being manipulated? Is it that the exam was set a bit easier because elections are around the corner?
You got it right.
All these questions
you got it right.
As a result, what we need to do for people to restore the confidence in the masses, the confidence in the people, what we actually need to do, we need a comparative analysis of this year exams paper compared with the last 5 years to see the quality of the questions and the difficulty underlying the questions. And what we also need, we need a forensic audit of these numbers to provide confidence in the masses that these numbers weren't manipulated. The fact is that statistics follow a pattern. If you look at American elections, for example, after the elections, they will just interview like 2 or 3% of the people of the electorate, and they can project and tell you how much the Democrats will get, how much the Republicans will get by just interviewing a selected 2%. And the reason that they can't do that is because the statistics fall as a pattern. But these statistics in PPP doesn't fall apart. How could you jump from a state where you have less than 40% pass in NGSA to 64.9%? How could you explain that? That cannot be explained. This is all a political move. And I want the guy needs to recognize and understand that we're excited about the kids' performance. Be excited about what the teachers do. But we're very much disgusted with people to be using our children as political tools to achieve their ends election day 2025.
And Mark, I so much agree with you. All the years we're struggling 40-something%, but in 2025 we gone to 60-something%. But you know what? You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Because you know what? Come CSEC, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't see this at CSEC. Our math result will be just as poor as it was last year and the year before and the year before. It would not be better. So go out there and try to fool people, Priya, you and your crew. But while we're on that, let me return to this t-shirts thing. Priya, Charles, Sonia, Susan, Dio, Egil, Mark Phillips, Kwame, Joseph Hamilton, Sarah, Gail, all of y'all got children and grandchildren. Put them t-shirts on them. Put them t-shirts on y'all children. You don't see Priya modeling her children all over the place, but Priya like to have other people's children modeling all over the place with foolishness. Put y'all t-shirts on them. Don't put your t-shirts on ordinary people's children. Put your t-shirts on them. Put on the caps on y'all children. All of you're keeping your children hiding away from everybody else. Put your t-shirts on your children. Let your children promote your party. So Mustafa, you must get your grandchildren and your children to put on their t-shirts and go there. Don't force your will on other people's children. But before we go, I want to say to us, I'm seeing a whole lot of craziness, again, desperation mode. And I'm seeing, and the gears are not moving fast enough for them. So it's desperation. I am seeing a kind of craziness circling around Facebook, where a young lady is saying that the APNU AFC government did not cater for young people and they pushed young people aside and all of those things. But let me remind her that by the time the PPP got into office, yes, by the time the PPP got into office, the PPP fired nurses. You know, this is a young lady who's talking about Granger abandoned youths and failed them and all kind of thing. This young lady here. But this young lady forgot that she was one who enjoyed privileges of the previous government, the APNU AFC government. 200 nurses left for the UK between 2021 and 2024. Doctors, about 30 of them were forced to leave because of the conditions that they were forced to work under. Young doctors. The PPP closed the Bertram Collins College that the coalition government had set up there to train our young people before they enter into the world of work. The Bertram Collins College. The PPP closed it. You know? Youths who were employed by the John Ambulance Brigade, they were all fired. The PPP fired them. They suspended the nursing school in Linden. So y'all don't come around this place and write foolishness. I understand that some of you got to write for your dinner and you got to sing for your dinner. But don't come around here to tell people nonsense. Facts are facts. You ask them who suspended the nursing college, the nursing school in Linden. The PPP did that. Even the public assistance they took away from some of the folks. Young boys, handicapped children, differently able children, sorry. So don't come here to tell us that the coalition government didn't do anything for young people. Don't come here to tell us that. All you are doing here is making up a whole lot of stories. Tell us what the PPP did for the children in Linden. Tell us what they have done for the young people in Linden. But we can tell you if you don't know, they've shot and killed them. They had to go to school with mosquitoes and fleas and flies, leaking school roofs. So don't come to tell us that. They killed Adriana Young. That's what the PPP did. And those are young people. If we talk about those who are voting age, talk about the two who were just murdered in Linden. So don't come here, don't come on these platforms to tell us about the APNU. The PPP were in there for 28, of the 33 years. You show us what they would have done. You know how many mothers are still looking for their children? Huh? You know how many mothers are still looking for their children? So don't come on those platforms to talk about what the PNC did and APNU and all kinds of things. And you know, it's disgusting, Mark and viewers, that the PPP only remember them governing this country from 2020 to 2025. They don't remember what happened before 2015. They don't remember what happened before May of 2015. They don't remember that. You were there when we had the jailbreak. You were there. Your minister left 2 houses from 5 escaped prisoners. You were there. During your term in office, the PPP, you killed your own minister. To date, we can't have an investigation launched to find out what really happened there. So don't come and tell us about that. You need to go fix your business. But we know come September 1st, y'all ain't gonna talk about SOPs. And I hear this talk about SOPs all the time. What's the nonsense with the SOPs? SOPs dead. There was a recount. So we're talking about SORs. That's what we're talking about now. SORs, not SOPs anymore. There was a recount. That is why you're there. So y'all don't come around here making yourselves like you're so holy and righteous. Under the coalition, we had the Durban Park. Huh? What have you done? We'll see the pictures. The operator will put up the pictures of Durban Park. What have you done with Durban Park? You left it there. The National Cultural Center that was built under LFS Burnham when he governed this country. What have you done with it? It's only because you people got to use it. This is the state of Durban Park. This is the state of Durban Park, and you're talking about one people and one Guyana? One nonsense? Tell us about the buses, those Granger buses. You tell us about those buses that you allowed your people to do all kinds of things, to throw diesel in gasoline in vehicles that are supposed to have gasoline. The sabotaging that you did, many of them, you erased the names off of them. You tell us about the boats that you took off of the rivers that Granger had there to transport students and pupils to schools, to their schools. This is the state of Durban Park. So y'all don't come and tell us any nonsense here. We understand our history. The Enmore Martyrs Monument that y'all going there to have all your fancy ceremonies, that was built by LFS Burnham. The holidays, the religious holidays that we're enjoying, the PNC put those in place. So some of you go read your history. Go read your history. Viewers, there's so much more for us to talk about. The National Park. Go see the condition of the National Park. And not only where the stadium, the stands are, you walk around the National Park and see what's happening there. Nothing about the PNC or nothing that reminds them of Burnham. They want to keep standing there. The sports hall, you go to the sports hall. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent there. You go check it out now. It's leaking. Lighting facilities not working. And just the other day, that entire building was rebuilt. Y'all must ask Charles, where is the money? Ask Charles where the monies are. And so don't come here to tell us all kinds of things. Facts are facts and they will remain facts. You talk about Burnham and Burnham caused you to eat rice flour. Rice flour is a big thing now. A big thing now, rice flour. Even the president spoke about it. He went to an exhibition. So don't come to tell us anything about Burnham. You go to Wim Police Compound or somewhere around there, you're going to see 4 of the big buses parked up. They're parked, they're rotting. So don't come and tell us nonsense here. We always care for our people. That is why we provided transportation for our children. We provided boats for them. We provided bicycles. We gave them books again. So don't tell us the kinds of nonsense you're telling us. If we had followed Burnham's plan like you're trying to follow now, we would have been far off, far better off, because we would have been producing and we would have been eating what we're producing. We would have been able to export like we were doing before, you know, like we were doing before, exporting canned pineapple, exporting canned black-eyed peas. So don't come and tell us anything now. Don't come and tell us the kinds of nonsense you're telling us. We understand that you're in desperation mode and your gear is not moving fast enough. But come September 1st, we'll park you in a corner. Viewers, this is all we have to say this evening. We've got lots more, but you know, I can't impede too much on Sherrod's time. But let me say to the PPP, come next week, you'll collect the sanctions and you'll shut your mouth. Burnham instituted free education in this country. The PPP placed a price on education in this country, and that was to stop ordinary people from having their children go to those schools. Under Burnham, we had jams and jellies being made. Viewers, I'm happy that you're bringing those out. In Blackbush Polder, we had a juice factory. We had a juice factory. We were the breadbasket of the Caribbean. Who stopped that? The PPP. So y'all don't come and tell us those kinds of nonsense. Don't come and tell us those kinds of nonsense. The night school in Sophia and in Linden and at Kildonan on the quarantine, the PPP stopped it. We have the Critchlow Labour College up to a day like today. We can't find out how that college was burnt. We know that it's arson. The fire police report said, the fire service report said it's arson. But we know who do it. Critchlow Labour College that Robert Possard went to, they have starved that college. But don't worry, a good time is coming. Come September 1st. Denise, goodbye to you and thanks for being with us here. Come September 1st, we know what we have to do. And if you don't remember anything else, remember Adriana. Remember those 2 young people, the young lady and the young man who died because 1, they couldn't get the monies for the transplant. 2, because she couldn't afford dialysis treatment. Adriana Young, the Henry boys, the 2 from Linden, the 3 from Linden, Harry Singh, Boston, Orin Boston, Rondell Clark, Quindon Bacchus, Bascom, all of them, we must remember them come September 1st. So long for being here with you. Thanks for being here with us. We'll see you next week for more on advancing the cause. And let me say to you, the PPP are in desperation mode. Watch out for them. All the accidents we're having on our roadways, and they can't do anything about it. You know, roads are just built and they're digging up the roads again. I mean, we said it before, But the US Secretary of State had to come here to tell them about the concussion road that they have here. What an embarrassment. What an embarrassment to the new Dubai of the Caribbean, you know? Look, folks, I can go on and on. Mark can stay here with me for the rest of the evening, which is sometime in the morning for him at his end. But we're going to leave you with that much. Stay focused. Understand that you're dealing with a wicked set of people. And for Guyana to grow, the PPP got to go. Take care, be safe on the roadways, and we love you.
Take care. Bye bye.